So I want to go over impacts of trauma. We know that there are internal experiences. So these might look like intrusive memories, nightmares, flashbacks, negative thoughts and mood, frequent fear, and that can lead to avoidance. So we might have a student in the classroom who might look like a resistant sort of style of engagement and be like, no, I don't want to do coloring. No, I don't want to sit there. And it might be not necessarily resistance, but avoidance. There's something about that activity that actually is triggering or is extremely uncomfortable for the student. And in terms of that fight or flight piece that can come up, there's a more likelihood for feeling kind of alert at all times. And that will look like irritability, impulsiveness, hypervigilance, easily startled, difficulty concentrating, and sleep. Now, this is, again, really helpful for working with your teachers at your school who might say, I don't know what's going on, but here's what I'm seeing. In the classroom, this high arousal, high reactivity might look like, again, difficulty with focusing, easily bored, tired, emotionally reactive, inflexibility. It's also a safety skill to use lying or humor to kind of redirect attention away from themselves. So these might be what we would used to kind of call like our class clowns, or the student who pulls attention away from something serious as a way to avoid feeling uncomfortable or engaging with the material. This might also look like aggression, withdrawal, and some bathroom accidents. So students or children with traumatic histories are more likely to have an accident and kind of pee in their pants or not quite make it to the bathroom, or you might notice their clothes smelling like pee because they kind of struggle with that. Now that's another difficult area, is because that might also make us think of neglect, but it might be more of issues with using the restroom on time. So in terms of what we can do as a school, one of the things that would be helpful is for us to create and support a culture that prioritizes safety, empowerment, trust, choice, and collaboration. For some schools, this feels very like, of course, that's exactly what I want my school to look like. And for others, it might bring up questions. How can we empower our students? How do we build in trust and choice and collaboration? Because we do have to meet behavioral expectations of how to engage in class. But these also have to pair well with creating a sense of safety and trust. So I'm super curious. How does your school actively promote a responsive school climate?
Can you define responsive school climate more?
Yeah, so what language or programming or protocols are kind of defined to note that there should be some amount of consideration for individual differences in school engagement?
I'm like, it's so funny. I'm like, that's complicated. I think we have a pretty good PBIS system at our school. What else do we do? Really try, which I think is really great, because it's a whole different game when you are in a classroom and you're looking for what kids are doing well versus the other one. Yeah, that's the main thing I'm thinking of right now. So.
Yeah, and I think for me, this question was more to engage with the idea of like, is there something that the school promotes that indicates responsivity? Or is there something else that could be kind of added to demonstrate that? And that'll vary class by class and by school. So thinking more of what are some very specific ways that people can engage with trauma-informed practices. And there's a few levels in which we could do that. A tiered approach. So there's individualized, so one-on-one pieces, targeted, and universal. And we're going to go over each one. So for universal, these are things that all students will have access to. For now, I'm thinking more of within the classroom, And a little bit later, we'll go over the school overall or in general. So within the classroom, it would be really helpful if teachers could incorporate some daily mindfulness. So a way to teach the students to be a little more centered at the start of the day, or when things get a little too amped up or too energetic. Some examples of this would be doing some simple yoga. And there are a few online resources. And then some breathing exercises or a gratitude activity. And then the next would be sending parental education informational sheets. So letting parents know that these things will be incorporated in the classroom to kind of help boost engagement and a mindfulness approach. Another helpful piece would be to do morning meetings. So within the classroom at the start of the day, beginning on a very positive note or a warm like activity like shout outs. So this teacher might be able to note, so-and-so has done a great job of something really positive, or I really appreciate the classes lining up at the door, or everyone coming in and sitting on the carpet and being ready. This is also a really good time to include a review of the schedule for the day so that there's sustainability in routine. And this is super important with trauma triggers because when something's a surprise and there's less structure, that is very alarming for children with traumatic histories. So doing a review of the schedule is really helpful. And then lastly, to consider relationship building activities. So icebreakers at the start of the day or at the beginning of an activity, and structured social time, because students need a break every once in a while. And so that has to be kind of incorporated. For you, Kathy, which of these universal strategies are you interested in?
So I'm going to probably say mindfulness, because I was hired on as a second social worker to do like social emotional learning curriculum, and mindfulness is going to be a big part of that this year. And so hopefully I'm thinking that when I'm in these classes and kind of sharing these like mindfulness tools, students will be able to identify things that they like that work for them, and maybe teachers can be like, oh, I see like a difference using them, and give them that time or space to do it.
So are you kind of envisioning providing these services in the classroom and then training teachers on implementing some of that?
No, I will be like, it would be more on like, so whenever I do these social skills classes, teachers are present, and so they would learn about the strategies that way. So it wouldn't necessarily be like teacher training specific. So.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I think that would be an amazing opportunity for all of those students and the teacher to witness you as a model.
And yeah, and then maybe if there is more interest in it, it can turn into like teacher training if there are questions. And yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for doing that work, Kathy.
Yeah, it's fun.
I was wondering, what barriers do you think might come up in that work?
We have a lot of classrooms. We're a dual language school, and so our DLI teachers have a lot of stuff to cover, and we don't have a lot of time. And our school likes to take advantage of a lot of opportunities, and sometimes that eats into time too. So I think that's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm. So finding a way to meet or go to all of the classrooms.
I'll definitely, I'm built into the schedule, I guess, just like if they wanted to bring more of those like universal supports that you had on your like 2 slides ago into the classroom, like time for that.
Okay. In terms of like some targeted possibilities, one of the things that I really advocate for is a cool down center. Some people might call it a calm down, and I don't love that name because anyone that's told calm down doesn't really respond in that way. Though I do like this idea of the way, like describing it as a cool down, a time to relax and come back to baseline. So I think it's really important for this option to teach our students how to access that. So is it they request it? Do they raise their hand? Do they write a number on their paper? Or do they, there has to be some form for students to know when they can access it. And within it, there should be like a comfy chair of some sort, or even if it meant some pillows on the floor for them to kind of sit in. I like the idea of a chair because then they can't lift it and move it if they're using the cool down when they're upset. And sometimes our children love to throw things when they're upset, and I think it's difficult to throw a bigger chair. There should also be some sensory items, and I'll go over those in a different slide. And then coloring books are really helpful as an activity that kind of takes them away from their thoughts and hopefully moves them towards focusing in the moment to that activity. Another way to kind of help with a student who's struggling a little bit, and the universal ones, strategies aren't as helpful, is to accommodate the way that they sit in a classroom. I think a lot of teachers, when they notice some behavioral concerns, might move that student to the front of the classroom. And that makes a lot of sense. Proximity kind of helps. It also lets you to see what's going on and intervene a little bit sooner. However, for a child that has some traumatic history, moving closer to the teacher's desk tends to be closer to the front of the room. And that feels unsafe because, as we talked about before, a higher level of alertness and vigilance means that they would prefer to be with their back against a wall, because then they can see what's going on around them and assess for risk and danger. And when we move to the front, we've essentially increased the distance between the chair and the wall. And so that's one piece that might be helpful to talk with teachers about, is to not necessarily move them closer, but to kind of think of a place where they would feel comfortable while still maintaining proximity.